The boy's name was Emilio Santos, and in many ways, he was just like the other children who ran barefoot through the crowded streets of Cebu City. But there was one thing that set him apart: his battered old guitar and the loyal dog who never left his side. The dog was a lean, brown mutt named Bituin, which meant star in Tagalog, a name Emilio's late mother had chosen, whispering that one day the dog would shine just as bright as the boy. Every morning before dawn, the city stirred awake with the clatter of jeepneys, the calls of street vendors, and the distant hum of the port. Emilio would wake on his small woven mat beneath the tin roof of their tiny shack and see Bituin curled up beside him, warm against the cool concrete floor. The two of them had been inseparable since his mother passed away 3 years earlier, leaving him in the care of his aging grandmother. Life was not easy. Emilio's grandmother sold vegetables in the market, earning barely enough to keep them fed. Emilio, at just 12 years old, felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, heavier than the guitar strapped to his back. He would play on the street corners for coins, sometimes outside the church, sometimes near the bustling night markets, while Bituin sat obediently beside him, head tilted, listening as though he understood every note. The guitar itself was old, its wood scarred and strings fraying, but it was his most treasured possession. It had belonged to his mother, who used to sing to him at night, her voice gentle and soothing. "Music can heal what words cannot," she used to tell him, her hands guiding his small fingers across the strings. That memory was a flame inside him, burning against the darkness of loss and hardship. One evening, after a long day of playing for passers-by, Emilio and Bituin sat by the seawall watching the sunset bleed red into the horizon. The smell of grilled fish wafted through the air as families laughed and children chased each other along the edge of the waves. Emilio tightened his grip on the guitar. "Someday, Bituin," he whispered, stroking the dog's ears. "We won't just play for coins. People will listen. They'll really listen." Bituin barked softly, tail wagging, as if in agreement. That night, as they walked home through the dimly lit alleys, Emilio saw a poster pasted onto a cracked wall. "America's Got Talent, open auditions in Manila." His heart skipped. The letters glowed under the flickering streetlight, impossible to ignore. He stopped, staring at it, his mind racing. Manila was far away, and the idea of traveling there seemed impossible. He barely had enough for rice most days. How could he dream of something like this? And yet, the thought wouldn't leave him. At home, his grandmother noticed his distracted expression. "What is it, Apo?" she asked gently, using the Tagalog word for grandchild. He hesitated, then showed her the poster he had carefully peeled from the wall. "Lola, if I could go, if I could play, maybe," his voice faltered. His grandmother's eyes softened, though sadness lingered there. "Emilio, the world is very big. Bigger than Cebu, bigger than us. But if your heart is telling you to try, then you must follow it. Your mother would have wanted that." The decision wasn't made in a single night. It was a battle inside him, between reality and dreams. But Bituin's warm eyes and his grandmother's quiet encouragement tipped the scales. Emilio began saving every peso he earned, refusing to spend even a single coin on sweets or toys. Weeks turned into months, and with each performance, he felt closer to something greater, though the road was still long. One day, fate intervened. A foreign tourist stopped to listen while Emilio played a haunting melody on his guitar, his voice rising above the din of traffic. The man, touched by the sincerity in the boy's music, asked if he had ever thought about auditioning for a big show. Emilio shyly admitted his dream of going to Manila but explained he didn't have the means. The tourist smiled, pressed a generous bill into his hand, and said, "Never stop believing in your gift, son. The world needs to hear you." That moment changed everything. With the help of his grandmother's meager savings and the kindness of strangers, Emilio finally had enough to make the journey. On the morning of his departure, he packed a small bag, a few clothes, a photo of his mother, his grandmother's blessing, and of course, his guitar. Bituin, sensing the importance of the moment, wagged his tail anxiously, refusing to be left behind. "You're coming too," Emilio said with a smile. "We're in this together." The bus ride to Manila was long, nearly 20 hours, with stops in countless towns. Emilio gazed out the window, watching the rice fields roll past, the mountains rising in the distance, and the endless faces of people living their own stories. He thought of what lay ahead, the bright lights, the stage, the judges. Fear coiled in his stomach, but so did excitement. Finally, they arrived in Manila. The city was overwhelming, tall buildings, endless traffic, neon signs that lit up the night sky. Emilio had never seen anything like it. He clutched his guitar tightly, Bituin trotting beside him, ears perked. The auditions were being held at a massive theater. A line stretched around the block, filled with singers, dancers, magicians, and hopefuls of every kind. Emilio felt small among them, but he also felt something else. He belonged here, too. When it was finally his turn to register, the staff looked at him curiously. "Is that your dog?" one of them asked. "Yes," Emilio said firmly. "He's part of my act." They hesitated but allowed it. After all, AGT was known for surprises. That night, Emilio and Bituin slept outside the theater, curled up together under a blanket. Emilio whispered into the dog's fur, "Tomorrow, the world will hear us." And as dawn broke over Manila, painting the sky gold, the boy and his dog prepared to step into a future they could hardly imagine. The morning of the audition arrived heavy with Manila's humid air. The streets buzzed with jeepneys honking, vendors shouting, and the endless shuffle of hurried footsteps. But inside Emilio's chest, there was another kind of buzz, a nervous tremor that made his hands sweat against the worn wood of his guitar. He sat cross-legged on the concrete outside the theater, polishing the strings with a cloth, even though he knew it wouldn't change the sound. It wasn't about perfection, it was about calming himself, reminding his heart that he had carried this guitar through storms, hunger, and loss. This was just another stage, only bigger, brighter, and with the eyes of the world watching. Beside him, Bituin yawned, tongue lolling out, then rested his head on Emilio's lap. The boy stroked the dog's ears, whispering, "We're ready, aren't we?" The line of contestants outside the theater was like a living river of talent. Dancers stretched their legs, singers hummed scales, magicians practiced sleight of hand with coins flashing in the sunlight. Emilio felt small among them, as though he had wandered into a dream where everyone else seemed larger than life. Inside the lobby, bright posters of past winners covered the walls, a reminder that ordinary people had once stood exactly where Emilio now stood, before their lives changed forever. His heart pounded. When his number was finally called, he and Bituin were ushered backstage. The sudden shift in atmosphere was dizzying, lights everywhere, cameras rolling, crew members hustling. Emilio clutched his guitar tighter, almost afraid someone might take it from him. A producer knelt beside him, microphone clipped to her shirt. "Hey there, sweetheart. What's your name?" Emilio," he stammered, his voice barely audible. "And who's this?" she asked, smiling at the dog. "Bituin. He's my best friend." The woman's smile softened. "Are you excited to be here?" Excited wasn't the word. Emilio felt like his entire life had funneled into this single moment. He nodded quickly, afraid that if he spoke, his voice would shake too much. As he waited in the wings, Emilio could hear the muffled roar of the crowd and the booming voice of Terry Crews announcing the next act. Each cheer, each gasp, felt like thunder rolling closer to him. He swallowed hard, his palms slippery against the guitar. He bent down and hugged Bituin tightly. "Whatever happens out there," he whispered, "we're together." Then came his turn. The stage was vast, lit by golden beams that seemed almost too bright for his eyes. The judges' table stretched across the front, Simon Cowell in his crisp white shirt, leaning back with that unreadable expression, Sofia Vergara, radiant and curious, Heidi Klum, smiling with warmth, and Howie Mandel, already leaning forward in interest. As Emilio stepped into the spotlight, the audience collectively leaned in. He looked so small, clutching a guitar that seemed almost as big as him, his faithful dog padding beside him. A murmur spread through the crowd. A boy and his dog, what could they possibly do? Simon leaned toward his mic. "Hello. What's your name?" Emilio swallowed, the microphone in front of him amplifying every shaky breath. My name is Emilio, and this is Bituin." "And how old are you, Emilio?" Heidi asked gently. 12. The audience let out a soft, collective, "ah," and Emilio felt his knees weaken. "What are you going to do for us today?" Howie asked. I will play guitar. And sing. With Bituin." The crowd chuckled softly, unsure what to expect. Even Simon raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "With the dog?" "Yes," Emilio said firmly, his voice finding a spark of confidence. There was a beat of silence. Then Simon gestured with his hand. All right then. The stage is yours. Good luck. Emilio took a deep breath, positioned the guitar against his body, and gave a small nod to Bituin.